Hey everybody, welcome back. We are going to be painting this cute little barn owl today. First we are going to, of course, trace the stencil, or you can, try to draw it yourself if you like. And then we're going to start with eyes. I just used a solid black watercolor, and I know a lot of people are anti-black or anti-white watercolors, but it's what I use. So I painted solid black. You'll notice in the final photo that there is a like a pinpoint, highlight pinpoints in the eyes. I did that with a white gel pen, or you can also do it with a white gel pen or the bleed. I did it with a bleed proof white, but you can use a white gel pen. And I'm going to link everything I use down below, of course, as always. And then we are starting with the wet on wet technique. My goodness, I can't talk today. I'm just going to be doing a wet wash over the owl part here, and it's just water. There's no color. You might be able to see a little bit of a tint to it, but I think it's just because my water is not fresh. But just some water at the top there. You start there just because it does dry, and then I'm adding an orange, like an orange kind of blended in with a little bit of a black, like a really light, it's almost like a tinted water. And I always do this because it's easier to start with a much lighter translucent watercolor instead of going dark, because you can add to it but you can't take away from it. That's probably the most important thing I would suggest doing, especially with this one, because we are going to layer on colors, so you don't want it to be muddy. And then I added an olive green to the top, and you could do, I mean, look at the owl yourself. You could do whatever colors you like. It just has, their mix of feathers. It kind of has a blend of different colors. So I'm just creating that effect. So I'm using like an olive green. I'm going to use browns. I'm going to use reds. All different colors. So, and again, it's, as you can see, I'm just going over the parts that I had the water down and putting an orange in the middle here. When this dries, it's going to dry very differently than what you're seeing right now. And then I'm going to, in the end, add a little bit more color. So you just want to layer it on. Once it dries, and you can say, okay, I want to add more, or not. And then you'll be happy because you don't need to try to take away some paint. I did want to make this top part darker to create that more dimensional effect. But again, if you start with a really, really light wash, then you will be happy because, it's just much easier. Now I'm adding it looks like I'm adding the dots now, which I am, but that's not the final dots you see. I'm just kind of create that little, I don't want to say blotchy because it doesn't look blotchy, but it's just more of a blend. I don't want you to see clear lines between the colors. So I apologize too because I am dealing with massive amounts of allergies right now. So I'm taking 2 different allergy meds and I'm still pretty stuffy. I think I'm allergic to mold because we recently moved to New England, and which is why I've been struggling to get some videos up. But now that we're settled, we should be good. I should be getting my videos up regularly. And it's winter here, of course. So I was thinking, oh, I'm not going to have any allergy issues, but it happens every time it rains. So I'm thinking it's mold. But anyways, you guys are probably don't want me to talk about my allergies. Anyways, I did the same thing with the wing here. Same thing as I did with the top head part. Just water first, and then I added some color. I just kind of roughly did what I would call like the lines and the feathers. There's obviously a very loose interpretation of that. Again, this is loose watercolor, so we're trying to just create that loosely interpreted version of the owl. I just messed with the shape. I added more orange because I just want to blend in with the top of it. I left a gap there in between the wing and the body just to create that continued effect. And then I took that, at this point it's just a mix of what watercolors I had been mixing together. It's not one specific color, like the browns and the greens all kind of came together. I started off with at the top in a pretty opaque version and just kept going down until it lightened up, and I used the natural process of the paint going away to just go lighter. I want it again to be much darker on the top because the snowy owls or the barn owls, I'm not even sure, I should probably look that up before I started this, but they have that white face, so you don't really see a clear line on their face, but you do want to create a little bit of that illusion. I'm putting in the beak right now with the orange. It's like a orange mixed in with some brown, and you can see that there's like a little bit of a light to that top left part there. That's the feathers. We're using the paper to create that feather, or the white face. And then I'm adding a little bit of the shadows around the top and the bottom of the eye, and that is to create that depth in the eye, because the eye obviously kind of sits a little bit more deeper into the face than the rest of the face. And then I'm doing this really light, like I said, just hardly tinted water featherness to the around the edge, just to kind of show the shape of the face, but you could barely see it. I mean, that's the point. You want it to be barely visible, which is that whole white face look, but using the white of the paper, which I know a lot of people have asked me about because they struggle with it a little bit. But you can see that here, a little bit of that, just to say, hey, here's the face. But when even with the whiteness, you're going to see where the paper, I mean, even with white feathers, you're going to have a little bit of the shadows around the edge. It's not solid white. And people always say, how do you paint white animals? White animals are not pure white. They're not as white as paper. There's shadows and depths. And this is just kind of showing you how much water versus color I'm using. That's the face. And by all means, practice it like I am here, just to create that effect. I mean, you can see it's barely, I mean, it's like a half a shade darker than the paper. Because again, white is not pure white in nature. It has shadows and creases and yellows and gray tints and stuff. And I put a little bit on the belly there, because they have that white belly too, where you can barely see it. You can add the legs if you want. I didn't with this guy. I was going for the loose watercolor. And then remember when I said earlier, you can go back over it later and add that darkness. That's what I'm doing, just to create it, that just shadow on the light source is coming from the front, so it's going to be darker in that back part. Since I was just doing this as a sample, it kind of did it off to the left of the paper. I'm not really sure why I did it that way, but if you ever do something like that and you're like, oh my gosh, it's not centered, just cut it down, crop it. You could get a cheap cutting paper. I don't know what they're called. Cutting paper? But you could get a cheap one from Michael's or on Amazon or something, just to crop your artwork down. It's no big deal. I think this is a 6x9, so I could have easily cropped this down to a 5x7 to make it centered. And then I waited for that to dry completely. Well, not completely, like pretty dry. You just want the paper a little moist, because when you add these these dots to the owl, it's kind of cool that it bleeds a little bit into the feathers, just to create that molted look a little bit. The ones I added to the wing here, it's dry, so the dots are not bleeding, but I'm okay with that. I'm going for a mix of the two. If you want it to bleed completely, and it's already dry, just take a spray bottle and just spray your paper, and then when you put the paint on there, it's going to bleed like it is on the top body part of my owl. I added the dots to the frame of the face. And I added also the bleed proof white to the eyes, to create that, dimensional look to the eyes. And that's pretty much it. Then you just kind of touch this up. Super simple. This is probably one of the most simple paintings we'll do. But it just has this really cool effect. You can make it fun, do different colors, but put your finishing touches on it, and voila, here's your owl.